So we have a great program planned for this afternoon. Before we get started too far, I definitely want to thank Alex Beholer, one of my fellow directors, for his help in getting together the speakers, and also Katie Burke, our development director, for helping put together all the slides and everything else. So we're going to have two talks today from Dr. Rick Miller, who is the president of SEG, and then Dr. Patricia Persaud, who's who's been running one of our GWB projects, and want to hear from her about her particular project. Click mouse, okay. So anyway, as I said, I'm also the development committee chair here on the Foundation Board of Directors for this year. And here again is our program. I will give us a brief overview of some of the SEG Foundation support and financials. Then we'll hear from Rick. We'll have some time for Q&A, and then from Patricia talking about her GWB project, and we'll have a little bit of time as that for Q&A as well. So moving on, the SEG Foundation, through your generous support, supports about 16 programs run by the SEG, mainly around experiential learning, professional development, social impact, and student programs. So you can see the list of the programs there on the right, partly through your support by donors, as donors really help make these programs run and are very well received by the membership. So this graph illustrates the support we've been able to provide to the SEG for programs over the last 6 years, since 2014, and we've been able to provide SEG with about $2 million per year to support the various programs that you saw in the previous slide. This year, we have about just over $2 million available. Again, that does mean, is SEG actually going to be able to use that money in the particular program? We don't know yet, but the money is available for the program. So so far I've been able to keep that fairly constant. If we look at very specifically for 2018 and 2019, yes, we've seen a reduction in the corporate pass-throughs. Some of our corporates have not renewed. Some of them have lessened what their dollars are. But some of that has been made up by individual giving. And the two other categories there, the annual spend rate and annual management fee, have been about 4% of our endowment coming through. And so, we've been able to keep that going. The increase there is actually due to the fact that we actually dedicated a bit more money in the endowment side from our earnings on the endowment fund. So we're able to keep that constant. But no general operating funds have been used for program support. Now that we also still, of course, have to pay for the foundation to run. If we look at this year's budget, was originally $700,000, but we're going to see a significant reduction in that, in part because we didn't hold our black tie gala to help out GWB earlier this year, and we are also not going to have a donor luncheon at the SEG annual meeting because of all the pandemic effects going on. We also, of course, less travel by staff for that, and SEG overhead, of course, has been reduced as well because they've had some budget cuts and staff reductions going on. And also, we just didn't use the amount of consultants that we thought we might use this year, again, because of all the pandemic and economic effects. So far this year, as of the end of May, we've taken in a little over $250,000 to help pay our expenses. Then, of course, we also have our annual fund cash balance, about $1.5 million. And I want to thank Pete Kramer and our treasurer and the SEG Foundation Finance Committee for their great work in managing our finances and making sure we have enough funds on hand. From a general expenses, our annual fund is covered about almost $100,000. And then, of course, we have our development expenses as well, where the annual fund has had to cover some of that. And then we have our development reinvestment fee, which comes in when we get large donations. Some of that is our normal reinvestment fee that goes to help, again, offset some of our development expenses. So we're in good shape. It's certainly is not great, but we definitely appreciate all the donations from donors like you to help build our programs and, again, keep the foundation running. So that's kind of all I wanted to say in that for that aspect, and we want to move on to the real reason you probably logged in, was to hear our speakers. And I am pleased to introduce Rick Miller, our current SEG president. Rick received a BA in physics from Benedictine College and an MS in physics with an emphasis in geophysics from the University of Kansas, and a PhD in geophysics from the University of Leoben in Austria. Since 1983, he has been at the Kansas Geological Survey, Research and Service Division of KU, where he is a senior scientist and courtesy associate professor of geology. His scientific interests focus on applying shallow seismic methods to a wide assortment of problems, from energy to engineering to the environment. SEG is Rick's professional home, and it has recognized his contributions advancing the science and serving the profession with the Near Surface Harold Mooney Award in 1995, SEG Distinguished Achievement Award in 2002 to Rick's research group, and Life Membership Award in 2014. His service to SEG also includes terms as second vice president, first vice president, treasurer and chairman of SEG Global, and representative to SEG Council 9 times since 1989. An SEG member since 1984, Rick has served on several boards, most notably the Leading Edge Editorial Board, where he was chair in 2009, half a dozen committees and various task forces appointments for Inter-Society Near Surface IDC in China. He served SEG twice as technical co-chair for the ICEG in the United Arab Emirates, 4 times as a workshop convener, 3 times continuing education instructor, and in 2012 he was the inaugural Near Surface Honorary Lecturer. Rick has been a guest editor many times and an author of 33 TLE articles. He's edited or co-edited 2 SEG books, an author on more than 135 annual meeting expanded abstracts, 113 referee articles, 24 in geophysics, and 2 more in our sister publication, Interpretation, and 8 SEG book chapters. Rick will now talk about the state of the SEG and how it has evolved during this current pandemic and economic changes. After Rick's remarks, we will have time for questions. Please submit your questions for Rick via the Zoom chat feature. Look for the conversation bubble at the bottom of your screen. Thank you, Rick, for taking time to address the SEG Foundation.
Thanks, David. I was going to be a little short on time the way it was, and after the introduction, I may be really short on time, but we'll get a swing at it here anyway. Thanks a lot, David, for an invitation, and also Alex. I appreciate having the opportunity to talk to the foundation trustees. It's a rare opportunity. I thought before I started out, I'd make it pretty clear that the SEG really does appreciate the leadership that Mike Loudon and Anna Shaughnessy provide for this group, and it's key to the future of SEG, and it's key to many of the programs that we'll talk about here today. So thanks a lot for those two, and of course Katie and Rebecca, your support is always greatly appreciated. But key thing here, I think, too, is that and you'll see this as I walk through this presentation, that the trustee associates, really, it's your commitment that makes SEG a very special organization. And I want to make that very clear as we go through this talk in terms of the number of programs that tie back to the many very valuable contributions that you make. I'm going to try to run this, Katie. I think I can run it, I believe, but I don't know. Oh, there we go. I guess I am running it. Okay, so anyways, for today, I wanted to kind of go through, I kind of broke the talk up into, since it's the state of SEG and the state of society, I want to kind of go through the portfolios and some of the things that they're doing. This is a lot more material here that I'm going to be able to cover in terms of highlighting each individual item. So what I will probably do is just hit on the top things, and then the material I'll try to make available through Katie to anybody that wants to have the slides. They're welcome to have them. There's a lot of information here that I won't have a chance to touch on. So mainly I just want to kind of give a flavor of kind of the impact and the kind of global reach of SEG, because it truly is a remarkable organization when you break it down to all the different tentacles that extend out from the society. I don't think that's mine, but okay, Katie, any help here you can give would be great. Why don't you go ahead and steer for me, Katie? Just go ahead and go to the next one if you would. Okay, first thing I wanted to hit on right off the bat was the 800-pound gorilla, which is the annual meeting. You probably saw just today, matter of fact, the announcement came out that there was a virtual option available to everyone, and through the great work of SEG staff, Rhianna Collier in particular, SEG is pursuing force majeure with the city of Houston, and as of today, we've got a tentative verbal yes that they will accept the force majeure clause. So, assuming that they will proceed through with that in writing here in the very near future, we will basically be going with a fully virtual meeting. There will not be a physical meeting under the assumption that the city follows through with their verbal commitment to go force majeure. And I will tell you, Wafik Begdon, who's the steering committee chair, general chair for the meeting, as well as Rhianna and her team, are looking at a really spectacular show. It's going to be a virtual experience that you will not want to miss. I can guarantee you that. It is going to be really good. Next slide. The technical program, basically, you saw some of the earlier slides during the introductory slideshow there going on. There's about 765 or thereabouts technical presentations that are planned, and this technical show will be a full technical program with live chats, real-time engagements. This will be like being there. It's going to be a great experience, and we're going to still keep our bag session, educational sessions. They're going to go full virtual, full interaction. Exhibitors and sponsors are going to have a whole lot of different options in terms of how they will make themselves present, how they will engage with the delegates at the meeting. It really will be something that you won't want to miss, and especially since it's our 90th anniversary, which is very significant in itself. Next one, Katie. One of the conferences I wanted to highlight is the Energy and Data Conference, which is kind of our MLAI AI conference that we basically are the lead on with partners APG and SPE. Last year was the first year. It was successful. It was actually did better than we thought it would, and we're expecting next year, February 2021, which is the next time that the conference comes around, to be even better yet. And if you can go to the next slide, Katie. We're currently basically ramping up to that conference with a whole series of webinars that will take place between now and the meeting in February. And we're already only 5 webinars into it. We've had attendees in excess of almost 2,000, thereabouts, real close to anyway. Next slide. And this is the event calendar for SEG coming up over the course of the next year. And as you can see on the left side, there's a lot of bold virtual starting to show up. And considering the state of the pandemic and public concerns and so forth, and the health and safety of our members and society at large, we will probably see more and more of those virtual bold indications coming up with all these different workshops and so forth. But the nice thing about it is SEG has already taken this taken a lead here, and we actually have made that pivot, and we are not only prepared for it, but we actually plan to actually do a really superior job on how we put these virtual workshops and meetings on. Next slide. Okay, I want to move a little bit now into our global component, our regional offices and our global business component. And as you might imagine, Yagani and her team in the Middle East have grabbed onto the virtual world and have already put on 5 virtual webinars that have been very well received. She's used significant of the talent we have in the Middle East to put these on, and they've been very well attended. Next slide. As you can see, that even though they were orchestrated out of the Middle East, the attendance to these webinars, and because they are webinars, give the opportunity to be very global. We had a very even distribution of attendees from across the globe, and she's already up to over 1,500 attendees in just these few webinars. Next slide. Look at the statistics on this. There's been 5 webinars, and she's already had 1,524 attendees. So it's been well received, well communicated, and I think it's going to get nothing but more and more attendees as the people get more familiar and more comfortable with this form of content delivery. Next slide. And of course, with our new office in Kuala Lumpur in Southeast Asia, I was there in late last fall, Q4, and we were already in the process of looking at opportunities for some continuing education courses. And with the need to go virtual, the professional development and the Middle East office have got together and have got these 5 different virtual courses that are going to be playing out between now and middle of September. So those are already in the works, and there'll be some of our first virtual continuing education courses. Next slide. And of course, Yagani doesn't want to be left in the dirt and so in the dust. So she's actually trying to get the first Middle East organized fully virtual workshop. And until just middle of July, she was on pace to be the very first virtual workshop, and this will be the first one that was out there. It looks to be just an outstanding workshop. Some really great speakers. Next slide. But then the China office came in, and they actually had a hybrid workshop, virtual and physical, in collaboration with the gas industry back in mid-June. It was a very well received, both from the physical presence as well as virtual side, and did a really nice job on that one with our partners. Next slide. And then just as of last middle of this month, the China office actually put on SEG's very first fully virtual technical workshop, and it went off without a hitch, and was large attendance, and had a lot of very good compliments about it. Next slide. One thing about the China office is, and the China membership, is that as we've started years ago trying to provide opportunities for our geophysical colleagues in China to become members of SEG. And so as kind of a culmination of many years of working in that direction, we're nearly completing the Chinese website, which is a standalone website, which will allow us then to take memberships from China and also allow the Chinese members to pay through with RMB through the web page, which is something that we've not had and has been a real hindrance to us being able to actually take on these members from China. So that's getting very close to completion. Next slide. One program that actually was ahead of the curve was our SEG webinar series, which basically was collaboration with the regional advisory committees from Europe and from Latin America, from Eurasia, and then also some from the near service community. And that's been ongoing since 2018, and they've already had 46 of these virtual conferences, and they've also been very popular, and it really is putting a big mark and a big flag, and SEG flag in the middle of these areas that we currently don't have as much association with, which is through Europe and Eurasia and so forth, and Latin America. It's a prime area. We've got a lot of members and colleagues that would be very well served by SEG if we can continue to get access to them. And this has been a very great program. Next slide. Of course, our near service community has been up and down through the years, but I think finally now we've got the near service technical section under great leadership, under great supervision from SEG, and we're seeing quite a bit of growth. And I think so far, just in half a year, we've already surpassed the number of members in the near surface section, as we had all of the highest number, which was in 2017. Based on some of the things I'm seeing and hearing, and being from that community, I'm fairly comfortable with that group and aware of what they're doing. I think this number will grow significantly. I would expect that within the next 2 or 3 years, it will double. So I think that we really do have an appeal to this community, and I think a lot of what the foundation is doing also is directly tied to what this group of professionals do. So kudos, and thank you for that. Next slide. SEAM has been one of our real success stories as an incorporated subsidiary of SEG. It seems like everything that SEAM does, they're successful at. Their original modeling development, as well as all the way through current programs and projects that are planned. CO2 is in the works. It has lots of potential, lots of promise. We're getting lots of good feedback. And I was quite pleased to see recently, I just got a prospectus sent to me from Bill Averill as far as going into the near surface and groundwater project. It looks like an outstanding opportunity to really impact a large community, not only geophysics, but also hydrologists and engineers. So I'm really looking forward to that going into full production. Next slide. Of course, the Women's Network is always looking for opportunities to serve our membership, and they found another one, which is they now have a service out there for reviewing and providing comments and concepts and ideas to our young professionals and students, early career professionals and students who provide these resumes to them. And so far, it's a free service, and so far they've already had 100 resumes that they've received and reviewed and sent back. So it's part of that soft skills that this community really is passionate about and engaged in. And so it's really a great move in the right direction to help these young professionals. Next slide. Publications and constituent engagement. Publication, of course, is our cornerstone as a society, all the way back from the early part of the 20th century. So it's no surprise that this is an area that we are basically the global leaders in. And if we look at our submissions, we're well on track to have more submissions this year than we've ever had in the past, significantly more. So that's quite a compliment to both the staff and the volunteer professionals working in the publications area. Next slide. Accepted papers, we're basically pretty consistent with where we've been the last 3 years in geophysics. Next slide. Geophysics is showing that we've got a lot of papers coming that are going to come out in the last few issues, and one really encouraging thing was last year we had the highest impact factor in the history of the journal, and this year we have the second highest impact factor. So we're holding steady with that top notch. And geophysics, basically, if you look across the entire applied geophysics world, is the leading journal, both from impact factor as well as its citation rate. So it really is a top level journal. Interpretation, we're seeing record number of papers being submitted, highest impact factor ever. It really is doing nicely. Next slide. Leading edge basically is leading edge. It's ever since Dean Clark started it back, in the 80s. It's been a cornerstone of communication for our society, and it continues to be. And now that it's on this citation metric, it shows it's continuing to climb in its citation rates. Next one. The SEG library is immense, 70,000 articles plus, and we're growing at 7% per year. And next slide, you'll see that it not only is growing in physical size, but the significance of the content is very obvious when the number of the usage number, the page counts have doubled from what it was last year. Next slide. SEG books. This is something that we've been doing since we were a society. Shortly after we started, was publishing books. We've got great books coming out. Dave Monk's book goes along with his DISC program. Vladimir Greskova's books is, and then of course Anders Roberts. Anytime he puts a book out, it's going to be popular. So these are going to be great books coming down. Next slide. SEG Wiki, this was a great concept, great idea. Apache funded early on. It's basically doing great. It's that community has published the translation for Sheriff's Dictionary in Spanish. It is now out. It's complete. The book version will soon be out. So that's a great accomplishment. This is a great group, and I was amazed at how much I actually use the wiki. I never really thought about it, so I started actually trying to keep count of how much I do use it, and it's an amazing resource. Quite a phenomenal piece of work. And then of course the Seismic sound off is kind of a new direction in communication. It's one that's current. It's fresh. It really is it's turning out to be a phenomenal program that SEG has put in play, and it really does do a great deal of impact in terms of its communication. So it's a good program. I see it nothing but growing and getting better. Next one. Membership, basically, as we would expect, is not quite as strong as it was last year, but we're pretty close. We're only 1,000 or so difference from this time last year, and with the pandemic the way it was, and the market crash, I'm really quite pleased that it's as close as it is, and we really do think that this will bounce back out, and we'll get back to around 14,000 members again by the end of the year. And actually, we still continue to be predominantly a global society with 57% of our members outside the U.S. Next slide. Student and early career. This is where the foundation really puts its stake in the ground. It really does have a phenomenal impact on this community. We couldn't do nearly what we do without the foundation. Student programs, 225 active chapters, 50 countries. Already we have 74 applications for best chapter awards. The whole student program, basically, the student programs in total, all the student programs basically were received around $1 million from the foundation. So thank you very much. That is phenomenal. I mean, if you think about the impact, the number of lives that are impacted, 225 chapters, that's a lot of people that are impacted by the foundation. So again, thank you very much. Next slide. Student programs, Chevron's Student Leadership Symposium. We are looking for ways to go online this year. It's the physical component will be canceled for this year, but we are trying to look at an online component. The Exxon's Student Education Program was scheduled to be the last year because funding was running out. But because of the COVID, we've canceled, and we will move that to next year, 2021, where we'll have the student education program have its final year. We had a great run, but its funding has run out. Next slide. Field camps. That's the way you impact students. That really gets them excited. We had 16 field camps funded last year with 124,000 coming out of foundation. So we're kind of keeping an eye on things in terms of how these field camps will play out. Some of the field camps have been canceled for 2020, which is appropriate, and some of which are being held in different forms and virtual forms. I know I talked to Rob Stewart about how the University of Houston's doing theirs, and they're doing a lot of things virtual. It's still having an impact. Scholarships, that's a big way. I mean, that really is 124 students around the world last year. There's so many stories come out from students about how their scholarship changed their life in terms of their professional careers, and it's all based on what the foundation does. Next slide. Challenge Bowl, this is one that students love it. I was an MC for one in the Middle East years ago. It's amazing. Even in a small corner closet room, these students get really excited. It's a great program, and it's even more fun whenever you see them at the annual meeting. I mean, you see the global finals. Peter's always done a great job, continues to do a great job, and I think that we got to find some way to get him a new vest every year, because he needs to keep that dolled up look going forward. Summer workshops, these are for the students to attend the research workshops. This year they were canceled because of the COVID. Next slide. Professional development, another way that the foundation really does make an impact. Next slide. Basically, the professional development basically has received around almost $300,000 last year to fund various programs. And of course, the honorary lecture and distinguished lecture are two really big ones. And all the honorary lectures this year were gone virtual. But we really have had quite a bit of significant engagement, even in the virtual world. So, and a lot of the instructors are quite pleased with how they have gone so far. I've been sitting in on some of the committee meetings, and there seems to be a lot of enthusiasm, even with the virtual format. They like the in-person better, but this is serving the purpose. The global the distinguished lecture global series, basically they started out in person, but they've now gone to full virtual since March. Next slide. Kind of some stats on that. We've had 5 lectures, 81 countries, and 4,500 unique visitors to the lectures. And a new thing that they've come up with, I actually listened in on the committee meeting when they come up with this, which is this opportunity for office hours, which basically is trying to simulate in the virtual world some of these discussion and after a presentation, after a lecture, meetings that they have with students. And when I did mine, I remember that a lot of the student groups would have a kind of a buffet lunch set up. They sit and talk to you, and they spend hours there visiting with you. And so this is an attempt to go virtual office hours to allow those kinds of interactions with students, and also with some of the companies and some of the societies that actually have sponsored these honorary lectures. Next slide. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, Dave Monk is doing the disc tour, and he'll start at the annual meeting. It'll be hybrid, and we'll kind of see how that works. We'll kind of play it by ear in terms of the health and safety issue. And then Joe Dillinger is going to be our 2021 disc lecture. Next slide. Evolve, active program, great program. 27 teams. I got to see them in action last fall. 27 teams in 2020. There's 21 countries, 30 universities. I mean, it's just a great program. It's very active, very educational. The students really get engaged. And Evolve Professional, which is targeted at providing training for actually companies, has got its first sign up with Oxy actually joined in. So we hope to have that grow. And I got to tell you, I'm really also encouraged with the adding of hydrogeophysics and carbon sequestration for 2021. That really shows heading in the right direction strategically, as well as to broaden out our base and to look at all of our applied geophysics community. Next slide. On-demand e-learning, continuing education is looking at live format. They're trying to make that switch, as we're seeing with KL continuing education programs, that this is the direction that we need to go, and we are going. Next slide. Geoscientists Without Borders. Next slide. This is a program that has done nothing but get. It's like a snowball. It's just gaining more and more involvement, more and more prestige, more and more awareness. It's one that it's funding through the year. Last year was almost $500,000. These truly are really, the humanitarian aspects of these are really quite substantial, and it's one that really appreciates Schlumberger's support for this. And so it's really does nothing but provides lots of opportunities for SEG and geophysics in general to make its way out into the world. Being, as Mike Loudon always says, we got to tell people that we can actually see under the earth. within the Earth. And so these kind of programs do that. So next slide. This year, basically, we suspended the application process in the first 2 quarters, of course, due to COVID. The process we plan to pick up again in the last 2 quarters. Some of these projects have been conduct some of the field work, and some of it's gone to virtual. We're kind of keeping an eye on things, but we're offering no-cost extensions all the way out for these programs to make sure that we don't put them in a position where they feel they have to go out and do things that may not be safe. So that's important. Okay, next slide. Okay, to sum up, I hope I haven't spent too much time. I'm trying to stay under budget on this one, but I like I said, it's going to be hard to do, but you're welcome to have all these slides. I guess state of the SEG, if we get down to the nuts and bolts of the society itself, we're projected to be under budget. We had an adjusted budget based on a review of our various scenarios going forward, one of which was what we're seeing now, which is a annual meeting that's going to be virtual, which the annual meeting basically provides a lot of revenue for SEG, as well as our partner events. And so we've had an adjusted budget, and we're going to stay under that. I think that even under sufficiently to be markedly under budget. So I compliment a lot of that to Rihanna and her team for the negotiations they did in order to get us out of some of the contracts and some of the costs that were associated with not putting on some of these meetings. And we have a lot of expense and a lot of liability. And so it was a great effort. And I appreciate that. The whole society appreciates that. We should end the year with about $4.5 million in reserves. If we keep going with some of the cost savings that we're seeing now, that could get up as high as 15 million. Membership, I expect us to be around 14. We may be a little shy, but I think that it'll just be a minor glitch in the long-term membership growth we're going to see, especially with China coming online with the web page. Our products and services are, I mean, as you saw from what I just showed, the demand for what we produce, both scholarly products as well as other products and services with training and so forth, are just seem to be an unquenchable thirst for these things. And our scholarly products are without rival, as far as you can see with the way geophysics has its impact factor is just really incredible. And none of this could be possible without a strong and very supportive foundation. So if we take all this down to the very kernel where we live from, and it truly does form out of this group, the foundation really has made us what we are as a society. The 4 hubs, the 4 regional hubs, Houston, the Middle East, Dubai, Beijing, the office in Kuala Lumpur, all those things are seeing increased engagement, more opportunities. They've all made the pivot to digital without even a miss a step. So it really is quite encouraging to see. And we just finished a kind of a strategic refresh. And so, the strategic initiatives are aligned with growth, with diversity. We really are looking at some really promising times ahead as we come out of this current low oil price and pandemic health issues. And now, building for the future, the virtual product pivot that we've made, I think, is critical as we build toward the future. And I think that some of the things that our staff and volunteers have been able to do on that side of the world is, with the innovative developments of digital platforms and e-business opportunities, are going to do nothing but enhance what SEG can provide to the profession and to our professionals. And so, with that, I'll kind of close it off so that I don't run too much over time. So anyway, so David, back to you.
Thank you, Rick, for such a great talk and summary of what's going on at SEG. So one of the questions that came in, we have maybe time for 1 or 2 here, is as you look ahead, what do you see are some of the most exciting things in SEG's future that you see coming up from your perspective?
I think SEG basically is perfectly positioned to attack the big data, the energy and data scenarios, the AI, the ML. I think that we're perfectly positioned as an applied geophysics community to look at all the different opportunities that come along with engineering opportunities, with hydrology opportunities. I think that SEG, then as we continue to evolve and improve our core in oil and gas and petroleum and energy in general is going to do nothing but grow. I mean, we've put ourselves in a position that from our digital capabilities as well as our scholarly activities to really be very nimble in terms of how we address and how we move forward. So I do think that the diversification aspect is going to really start playing out as we move into the next 10 to 20 years.
All right. Well, thank you, Rick. And thank you for making your slides available. Katie is actually recording all of this, so she'll send out a link to the recording, and you'll be able to go through Rick's slides a bit more slowly. But thank you, Rick, for giving such a great summary of what's happening at SEG and how all the programs have adjusted here for these new times. So now we're going to move on to our GWB speaker, and I'd like to introduce Dr. Patricia Prasad, an assistant professor in geophysics at Louisiana State University, and also a 2021 Radcliffe Institute fellow. And she'll be talking about her Geoscientists Without Border project being done in Myanmar. It's kind of halfway done, I guess. It still has a piece to go. And it was involving installing a network of broadband seismometers to help the country better understand the fault systems with Myanmar, and in particular around the major city of Yangon. Patricia is originally from Guyana and attended the University of Houston as an undergraduate and received her PhD at California Institute of Technology. Patricia has completed a major field study on the San Andreas fault system, which involved installing about 744 compact cable-free seismometers in the greater Los Angeles area. In addition to her teaching and field work, she serves on the Science Evaluation Panel of the International Ocean Discovery Program and is a member of the Incorporated Research Institutes for Seismology Working Group tasked with creating specifications and evaluation criteria for the procurement of new geophysical instruments for use by the research community. So I'm excited to learn about Patricia's project in Myanmar and how Geoscientists Without Borders has helped expand the understanding of fault systems in Myanmar. Patricia, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. And thanks to Katie and also Alex for inviting me. I'll keep my video off to save on the bandwidth. And let me see if I can advance my slides. Okay. Yeah, I think it works. Okay. So I'm very happy to be presenting today on the MUSE project. The MUSE project is the Myanmar University Seismic Experiment. The project was started in 2019. In the photo, you can see the famous Shwedagon Pagoda that is located in the Yangon region in the southern part of Myanmar. Myanmar was previously Burma. The pagoda stands roughly 112 meters high from the surface to its peak. It's on a hill, putting it at almost 170 meters tall above sea level. It is the tallest building in the landscape and is the oldest Buddhist stupa in the world. It was built roughly 2,600 years ago. The age alone of the Shwedagon Pagoda and the repeated damage from earthquakes would suggest that Myanmar's earthquake history is well documented and also well known. But it is not. The fact is the situation in Myanmar is very complicated, mainly because of the political challenges it has faced up until only recently. Myanmar is one of the poorest countries in the world, even though it is rich in natural resources. Myanmar is also involved in the world's longest ongoing civil war. This has had a devastating impact on a number of things, including advancing earthquake science and research in the region. Although military rule has officially ended starting in 2011, allowing Myanmar to open up to outside collaborations, there is still a lot that needs to be done here. However, the view and knowledge of the earthquake hazard in this region is rapidly changing. I'm not able to advance it. Okay, thanks. The map shows recent earthquakes in Myanmar that are color-coded by their depth. And its largest city, Yangon, where our project, let's see if I can, yeah, okay, where our project is located. In his book, Earthquake Time Bombs, which was written by Bob Yeats, a professor at Oregon State University, Yeats dedicates an entire chapter to the 1930 Bagu earthquake, which occurred just 75 kilometers from the city of Yangon. Yeats notes that the Bagu earthquake, which shook and damaged the Shwedagon Pagoda, occurred at a time when Yangon was still small, about 200,000 to 400,000 people, and the earthquake caused the deaths of 500 people. Not a century later, the city's metropolitan population stands at over 7 million. Yeats notes that this ever-growing population is ill-equipped to handle another Bagu earthquake, or even one that's smaller than the Bagu earthquake, which was a magnitude 7.3. For scale, the population of the entire state of Louisiana, where I am, is less than 5 million. These numbers shed light on the earthquake threat in Myanmar. Our GWB project in Myanmar is focused in Yangon for a number of reasons. It is the largest city in Myanmar with the largest population, but it also lies along a segment of the Sagan Fault, shown in the map, where the structures are not fully known, and it is located, like most other major cities in Myanmar, in a sedimentary basin, where the ground shaking gets amplified due to the soft sediments and the basin shape. My interest in the seismic hazard of this region started with work that I'm doing farther to the north. And this is showing the geophysical transect that I'm working on that was funded by the NSF. This is a big collaborative project. That particular project is a large-scale project intended to identify deformation in the broader plate boundary zone. I'd like to tell you a little bit about this project because it helps to understand the need for the MUSE project. This is a zoom in on the study area, which is an east to west array in central Myanmar. It shows the stations that are currently recording data. There is a gap in the array because our Indian colleagues have not been able to install stations there as yet. On the Myanmar side of the array, there are 31 stations. These are all broadband stations. To install those stations, it took 3 teams, as shown here, of about 4 or 5 people, usually in a team. Even though we trained our Myanmar colleagues on broadband station installation, the teams were all led by US participants. The US group goes back every 6 months or so to service the stations, and the US group and collaborators are doing research on the data. We spent 1 month in Myanmar installing the stations, and I'll give you an idea of why on the next slide. To install a broadband station, we first need all of the equipment and technical knowledge to be able to set up the station and troubleshoot problems such as the mast position not centering. The equipment and tools to set up one station just about fills a 4-wheel drive vehicle with items packed also on the roof. So here I'm showing the layout of a broadband station, which is actually in the fenced area in the photograph on the right. On the top in the green plastic box, you're seeing the battery, the data logger, and then a bunch of cables that go to the power source. In the bottom photo on the left, you're seeing the sensor, and the sensor is completely buried in the ground, so you can't see it. We also need a solar panel to be able to power the station, and everything needs to be surrounded by a fence to make sure that there's no damage to the station. Given the large footprint of broadband stations in terms of the volume and weight of the equipment, the complex installation procedure, and the fact that they are visible above the ground and likely to be vandalized, and also the prohibitive cost of getting a large number of stations, many seismologists are now starting to work with nodes. Okay, so I'm showing you a node in the bottom left photo, the white instrument, that is a node, and it is sitting next to a broadband sensor, which is a CMG3T sensor, and that is only the sensor for the broadband station, not everything else that you need. And to give you a sense of how compact they are, you're seeing at the top a photo of 48 nodes that are packed in a mailroom to be shipped from Italy back to the US. So here I'd like to introduce the MUSE group, which is a group that's working on the installation and the training in Myanmar. You can see Rashid Ajala, who's a PhD student in my group. He's on the left. And then Nam Manirat, she's a PhD student at UC Berkeley. She's in the middle. And Ritu Ghosh is a PhD student at LSU. She just started. So I'd like to point out a few things about these students to echo a lot of what Rick said earlier. Rashid Ajala has been an SEG scholarship recipient and very much worthy of the scholarships he received, and they really helped to advance his learning. Nam and Ritu Nam is from Thailand and Ritu is from Bangladesh, and they're both interested in understanding the seismic hazard in the region because they have felt the earthquakes that have occurred in Myanmar. So on the left side of this slide, I've listed the universities in Myanmar that are associated with this project and that are receiving training as a result of this project. So what are our goals? What do we want to do? Over 2 years, we'd like to organize and lead 2 geophysics training workshops with roughly 40 participants of professors, lecturers, researchers, graduate students, and also undergraduate students from around Myanmar. How will we do this? We had planned to do a training in 2019 of Myanmar colleagues, and then to deploy nodes in Yangon along a 15-kilometer profile. And then in March to April of 2020, the nodes would be deployed along a second profile in Yangon to collect seismic data. So why? We'd like to provide geophysics training for rapid response. When a large earthquake occurs, it's important to be able to collect seismic data immediately after the earthquake, even if you don't have instruments in place when the earthquake occurs. So monitoring of these aftershocks is important for understanding the earthquake process and also for seeing the faults that have been active and therefore assessing the future chance that they will be active again. We'd like to also establish university programs and local research in Myanmar because there were none before this project. And then we'd like to determine the crustal structure, the depth to the basement, basically the basin shape to estimate ground shaking from a large earthquake. The scientific basis for what we are doing in Myanmar comes from a similar project in the Los Angeles basin. The project location is shown in the map. There we have collected data over 3 years along 10 different lines that are color-coded based on the year in which the data was collected. And we wanted to gain a better understanding of how the ground motions due to a large San Andreas Fault earthquake would be amplified by the basin. The lines are in the basin. The San Andreas Fault is over on the eastern side of the map, and downtown Los Angeles is on the western side of the map. Okay, so Ritu, who is shown in the photograph on the lower left of the slide, is also working on this project, which we call the Basin Project, because it has good synergies also with the Muse project. I'm showing here on the right a profile to show you an example of some of the data we collected and that we are able to get the basin shape in the greater Los Angeles area. This is the type of project that we're doing in Myanmar. This is the information that we want and need to be able to assess ground shaking. To get started on the Muse project, we first conducted a symposium at LSU. LSU's international program funded the travel and lodging for 3 Myanmar professors to visit us on campus. And I'll show you a few photos that were taken at the symposium. Here we are in my geophysics lab that houses a number of different seismic instruments. We are looking at a broadband sensor in the photo on the left and at nodes in the photo on the right. You can see Dr. Kin Kin Win in the blue jacket, who is head of the physics department at the University of Yangon. You can see Dr. Mio Tant, who is the vice chair of the Myanmar Earthquake Committee, and Dr. So Min, who is a professor at Taungoo University. Dr. Kin Kin Win started a geophysics program at the University of Yangon, which is the first in the country as a result of this GWP project. So in the top left photo, you can see our vice provost of academic programs. This again is still at the symposium. That's Matt Lee. He has on a blue bow tie. And in the bottom on the left, you can see us doing lab visits. We're actually in a geochemistry lab there in that photo. And our Myanmar colleagues were interested in seeing my workspace. So how do I do what I do? What's the infrastructure that I need? What are the hard drives? What's the approach to handling large data sets and so on? So that's me on the right explaining that to them. During and after the symposium, we planned the locations of the seismic profiles in Yangon, and our planned locations are shown on the left. We selected 4 profiles as shown in the map. In late 2019 and early 2020, our colleagues in Myanmar and students at the University of Yangon visited each of these locations to secure permission to install nodes there. We had 2 sets of nodes that we planned to deploy, 48 from LSU and 120 from Pascal. Pascal is our instrument center in the US. And this was the first international shipment of Pascal nodes. So anywhere else besides the US to deploy them. So in early 2020, we had selected 45 participants for the training, and these were from physics and geology departments, some of them from computer sciences at universities around Myanmar. There's no, as I said before, there's actually no geophysics program there, except the current one that was started at the University of Yangon. We had shipped our equipment to Myanmar and cleared customs. Computers were set up with the necessary software and data. We were ready to go. However, due to COVID-19, we were not able to travel to Myanmar in March 2020. Instead, what we did was a series of virtual trainings for a group of 11 students and professors from the University of Yangon. And I started that in March, just before they went into a shutdown. We went into a shutdown before they did. And those 11 students and professors are shown in the photo on the top. The group has installed and picked up 112 of the 120 Pascal instruments, which is pretty phenomenal. We also submitted an SEG abstract, which was led by Ritu Ghose, and we will be presenting that at the meeting in October. So we adjusted our timeline in March, and we have adjusted it a few more times since then, and it probably will change again. But the idea was to install the Pascal nodes, 120 nodes, over the weekend, which is March 21st to the 22nd, a Saturday and Sunday, to recharge the LSU nodes, which they had been sitting there since the end of 2019, and they needed recharging. Pick up the Pascal nodes April 1st, and then return the Pascal nodes to the US April 10th. This was the idealized plan, also because Pascal needed their equipment back by a certain time for another experiment. So our plan involved occupying sites along 3 of the 4 lines that we had planned with Pascal nodes because we needed to get them back again to the US. And those lines are colored orange in the map on the right. The M1 line, we would deploy those nodes there later. The LSU nodes would go on those lines. So the plan was to have 3 groups at first, and I'll admit this was the first virtual training of any kind that I had done, and so it was just trying to figure out exactly how to do this. Not only that, I was dealing with a group that had no geophysics background. So we split the 11 team members into 3 teams, and that's shown here. They would deploy along that profile. And I give them information on station, latitude, longitude, specific instructions on how to install the station, how to troubleshoot it in case these different things came up, and then also what to do, when to decide to not put the node in the ground in case you think, for example, it might be stolen. Okay, then on Sunday, I split them into 4 teams instead of 3 because hopefully they had gained confidence in the process, which they had. And they were in 4 teams on Sunday, and they would install stations along the 2 north to south lines shown in the map. Here I'm showing examples of 3 earthquakes that were recorded by our instruments, and we will use these data. This was recorded at a Broadband station, the only other seismic station in Yangon besides our array. And it's just an example of the data that we will record. We can use these data to get the depth of the basement, the shape of the basin, which is important for ground shaking estimates. So the last few slides are photos of the pickup, which occurred in May to June of this year. And I'm showing our colleagues in the top photo, they're masked, so they're not looking the same as before. There were also fewer of them who went out to do the pickup. In the other photos, I'm showing you some of the areas where we had the nodes installed. In the lower left photo, you can see that is actually at a family's residence. And here, again, more pickup photos. In the 2 lower photos, you're seeing them cleaning the nodes. It's very important to clean the nodes and not necessarily something that we would be concerned with in the US, even though we should do it when we return the nodes to Pascal. But if we were to send an international shipment back to the US with dirt on it or plant or animal matter, Pascal would get into a lot of trouble, but also the nodes would probably be stuck in customs. So we had to go through additional training on not just how to retrieve the nodes in May, but then also how to go about making sure that everything was cleaned, but without damaging the instruments. And here again, more pickup photos and cleaning of the nodes. And I didn't think about this when I give them the training, but they had to actually take water with them because water is not just freely available everywhere in order to be able to initially clean up the nodes before putting them in the car. And this is my last slide. I wanted to show two students who are working on this project in Yangon, and they're just absolutely impressive. So this is Tet and Tinzar, and also to show them packing up the nodes on the right side in that photo. That's Tet, and then the person in the photo with Tet is a geology professor at the University of Yangon, that's Za. Currently, they have prepped everything and packed up the nodes. Everything is clean, and we are awaiting scheduling to be able to get the nodes back to the US. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Patricia. That was a great summary of your project. Really appreciate that, and amazing that you were able to train everybody remotely on getting things, installing and picking up all the nodes. That was that's definitely an achievement, I think, just to do that even.
Yes, it was absolutely, and I was very surprised, and of course every possible hiccup that I could think of, I thought about it, but it went smoothly. So there's promise there, a lot of fun. Yeah. And yes. It's my first training of this particular kind. I've done a lot of it, in my other projects, but always face to face. Yeah.
Right. Right. Well, I guess you must be a natural at virtual training then.
Yes.
All right. Well, I didn't see any questions come through for Patricia on this, but I guess, like I said, it's an amazing project and really helping out understanding the geologic structure there in a very populated city. That's, as you said, it's the largest city in the country, and could be very important to understand the earthquake risk there.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, I want to thank Rick and Patricia again for their time today to give us insights on the current state of the SEG and a great GWB project there in Myanmar. Before we close, I would like to congratulate one of my fellow directors, Mike Forrest, as being the 4th recipient of the Dick Bale Exemplary Service Award. So congratulations, Mike. And as you know, Dick Bale was one of our founding TAs and unfortunately recently passed away earlier this year. But congratulations, Mike. It's well deserved for all your service to the foundation. And I'd also like to thank all of you, our trustee associates, for your continued support and interest in our SEG programs. Geoscientists Without Borders, our professional development and student programs. All of that wouldn't be possible without the compassionate support from donors like you. I recognize that there are many worthy causes happening around the world right now. However, I ask that you please consider the foundation this year as you and your families are making your annual charitable commitments. Your generosity would make a tremendous impact to allow our SEG programs to continue to evolve and thrive during these unusual times. So please stay healthy and stay safe. And again, thank you for your support. I will remain online for a while. If anybody has any questions, you can certainly unmute yourself. And I don't know if Rick and Patricia, if you're available to stay online for at least a few more minutes, that would be great as well. But again, thank you very much for your time today. Like I said, Katie will be sending out a link to the recording here. If you have any additional questions, please send them to Katie at foundation@seg.org. We can answer any sort of questions you might have or forward them on to either Rick or Patricia.
David, it's Mike Loudon here. We just got a note in while you were talking from Maria Angela Capello for Patricia. Don't know if you can see it on your screen.
Oh, yes, I do.
Yes, so the question is, besides measuring seismicity, is there a program to inform the community what to do during earthquakes? Yes, there is. So that's a part of the training. And a part of the training is that communication of the hazard. So being able to communicate science, which we as scientists often do not do it that well, actually. but being able to communicate science in a way that the public understands. And that is a part of the training that we will do. And I'm basing that on my experience in Southern California, where the Southern California Earthquake Center really gives you a lot of material and help to be able to like say what we need to say in a way that the public can follow these instructions.
Patricia, this is Katie. There was one other question from Jamie. He wanted to know, how often does a major earthquake hit Yangon?
That's a good question. Yes. Hi, Jamie. So the last big one, as in, you know, you've heard of the big one on the San Andreas Fault. The last big one was the Bagu earthquake, and that was in 1930. And there was another earthquake, another very big one in 1912. Supposedly every 200 years or so, at least, there's a big one, but because the historical record is so sketchy, and that's what we're basing it on, it's hard to tell. But you don't need a really big one for it to be very damaging, because the cities, which are Mandalay, you know, Sagan, and also Yangon, they're located along a major fault.
All right. Any other questions or comments people want to make?
Probably want to know why you're here.
Yes, I guess I don't look much like the picture I showed at the beginning here. All right, if not, I want to thank everybody